everyone. Welcome to Guided Counsel, where my mission is to help one human at a time. And I have Edna from Edna Energetics. She and I started working psychic events, psychic fairs, about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. And we hit it off immediately. And we've been kind of like besties, like woo woo besties ever since. She's always up to my shenanigans, and I appreciate that. She's really insightful. She talks to angels, which is really cool, and she uses angelic energy for healing. So I don't want to give up too much information. I'm going to let her roll with it. So, Edna, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nita, for that wonderful introduction. I do work with the angels. I channel their energy through me, and the energy that I channel is intended to help the person across from me heal physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And if you don't have any physical ailments, then and you want to just uplift and raise your vibration, then we send the energy to you so that you can go up to the next level in your spiritual what is it called, in your spiritual growth. So
Okay, so let's dissect that
okay.
because the person that's probably watching this probably has not gone to a psychic event or fair, hasn't probably seen you. Now, there's different types of energetic healing. You might know it as Reiki, quantum touch. So, can you explain a little bit of the mechanics of what you do and how you do it?
Sure. So I am certified in quantum touch and in Reiki. And what I do is similar to those, but it's different because it's unique to me. Um, Usually, when you're doing Reiki, you're putting your hands on somebody and you're sending the energy through your hands into the person's body. When I work with a person, what I do is I scan the person's auric biofield, their outer being, and I find the blocks and the pain outside of the body. And I usually get a tingling or a throbbing, depending on how strong the pain is. And then I know that that's where we need to release and remove those blocks from the auric field. And once you remove the block in the auric field, the body actually feels better, and it actually goes into its own healing process because the human body is able to heal itself. So once I find it, I start, the angels just start channeling the energy through me, and I will start waving my hands around and trying to release the pain and remove the pain from that from that area. Um, Usually within 20 minutes, you will feel the difference. Most people tell me that they feel a tingling or a warmth or a throbbing as I'm sending the energy to them. And so that's why it's a little bit different than Reiki because I do it outside of the body. I can put my hands on the person to send the healing energy, but most of the time, old wounds are already stuck in your auric field and not exactly in your body. So that's why some people say, well, I've gone to the doctor and they've told me there's nothing wrong, but I had this injury 3 years ago and I just can't get rid of the pain. And the doctors are telling me there's nothing wrong with me. And that's when I have to explain to them, well, that's because that trauma got stuck in your energy field and that's where the pain is located. So well, when I say me, I mean the angels and we find it, we locate it, and then we send the energy to that area so that the body can then start releasing that pain.
So, and when you say auric field, I mean, I know some people can see colors in the aura in people's auras, and that's exactly what it is. It's just like an invisible layer that no one sees except people that have that ability to. So you're not seeing colors when you're dealing with the auric field.
So you're right. It is because we are all energy and frequency. We have this magnetic field around us. It's called the biofield, and in spiritual world is called the aura. So I personally do not see the color, but I can feel around in that energy field, and I can find where there's something that might be stuck that's causing some kind of tingle or pain. I do see colors, but when I close my eyes and I see the color to me represents the archangel that happens to be with us at that moment, working with us. So for example, if I see green, then I know it's Archangel Raphael, who's here helping. If it's blue, it's Archangel Michael, who's here for protection. If it's pink, it might be Jophiel or Ariel. So I do see color, but it comes to me as in a shape of an orb, and that's to me the representation of which angel is present.
So let's talk about working with the angels real quick. When you make a connection with the angels, how do you know that you've actually made that connection?
How do I know that I've made that connection? Well, it took me a long time to realize that I was making that connection. It wasn't until I started meditating on a consistent, daily for at least 20 minutes a day that I started to get these downloads of first I would get a name. I would get the word Michael. And then I say Michael and I would sit there and then all of a sudden I would see this blue orb appear in front of me. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So now I know that when I see blue, that's going to be Michael. And then I would meditate another day, and then I would hear something like Ariel, and then I would see the color pink. So they started coming to me by it was like a download and then a color that came. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's how I started to identify who it was.
Oh, interesting. And I know you've said this many times before when when you're working at the events to people, and also when you do your presentations, but I want you to also clarify that when you're working with these energies, you're not doing the healing in
Correct.
specific.
Yeah. So, a lot of people, well, we call ourselves healers, but technically we're not the healers. It is the person that's sitting in front of us that's actually healing themselves. I like to think of myself as a channel. And what I do is I'm the facilitator. I'm allowing the energy from the angelic realm to travel through me into the third dimension and then transferring over to the person so that the person's body can start regenerating at the DNA level and activating what needs to be healed. So basically, I'm just the vessel which the angels work through.
Have you ever experienced a time when it's hard to connect with an angel when you're about to work on someone?
I never have trouble connecting to the angels. The angels are always here and willing to help. I do have trouble sending the energy to the person, but it's not that the energy is not going, it's that the person is blocking the energy from being received. So the angels will send the energy and I could see that the energy is going, but the person's got a shield and they're not really ready to accept the energy. So the energy is being blocked. And so
Hmm.
the energy is just sitting, like I said, out here in the before it even reaches the person's auric field. And sometimes there might be like they do want the help, but not really.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like it's going up against a brick wall and there's a little crack in the wall, and then the energy is like trickling in, like droplets. And you got all this gushing water, but they're just getting like little drops of it. So you know, sometimes people say they're ready to heal, but they're not really ready, or they're not, they don't really want the help. And at that point, it's like, well, there's not much I can do because the angels and I are here to help and send the energy. But if you're not willing to take it in, then it's just going to sit there.
Yeah, and I can totally relate when the times that I've worked at those events that I've had to turn people away because it's like they're in for something, they come to see me for something, and I just cannot connect with them energetically. I mean, no matter what would come out, like I have confidence in what I'm saying, giving them the information, but they were not having it. And
Yeah,
so I just like, hey, you know what? Let's go our separate ways. Because they're not ready to hear, you
right.
know.
Yeah,
They want to hear maybe good news or better news, and sometimes the news is not that great, and sometimes it's just neutral or indifferent. So they already have that wall. So I can totally relate to with you on that one, and it sucks, but that's just the way um, individuals can be. But at least you've planted the seed for them at
yeah,
that point.
yeah. And it's a lot of times those are the people that have come to accompany somebody else, and the other person's the one who's insisting that they get the
Oh, good point.
Different. Yes. So it's like it wasn't their idea to begin with. It's just that they're trying to do it to shut the other person up, basically. And so I'm like, fine, give me the session. But it's not that they're not ready for it, but the other person wants them to have it. So
Yeah.
So it's like,
That makes
okay.
sense. I'll pay for your ticket to go in.
Exactly. Oh, pay for the session. And I'm like, it doesn't work because and I even asked them, Is this something you want?" when they sit in the chair. And most of the time, as soon as I ask, "Is this something you want?" and the answer is yes, the energy just starts flowing. It's like I
Mhm.
don't even have to do anything. I just feel the energy going to them. But if they say yes, and it takes me a while to be able to get that energy to them, I'm like, yeah, no, they weren't ready.
Um, so I'm gonna talk about the experience that I've had with you. The times I always feel like every time I see you're like working on my energy, because I either have a pain in my
Yeah,
butt, which is usually the case.
sciatic is a pain in the butt. Yes.
Yeah. I'm a runner, so I usually get the pains there. But when when we like trade services and we're working at these events, and I've sat in your chair, and of course everybody's experience is going to be different. There's different layers of people that you work with. There's what we call muggles,
Yes.
normies, and then you have light worker star seeds or people that already have these abilities but are at different levels of the ability. So I want to explain my cool experience that I've had with you on multiple occasions is when you are doing your magic on me and I quickly go into a meditative state. um you're able to take me into different dimensions. I travel,
Mm,
and then I see images, very cool images, and I know I'm traveling because for me it feels like I'm either in Star Wars or in Star Trek, where you go warp speed and you see all the stars or the lasers coming
yeah.
up to your side,
Mhm.
and so that's how I experience. And then I'm like, wee, and I see lots of visuals, and then I know after you're done, you have visuals as well. So it's like you take my information and then you interpret it to whatever your interpretation is. But I think at the end, it's the interpretation is like the same gist,
Pretty much, yeah.
which I find like super, super cool. Have you had similar experiences with other clients like that?
Usually when I work with people that are already on their spiritual path to enlightenment, it happens a lot. Yes, it does. I'm able to connect to their energy, and it just seems to amplify the energy between us. And most people that I've worked with, they say that they do have some kind of experience where they're taking up to the next level because they're ready for it and they just needed that extra push of energy to get them to that next level. So that's to me, that's the best kind of connection. I also tone when I'm doing the healing sessions and when I'm connecting to somebody that's a light worker or is in the path, the toning and the singing and it just feels light and airy and happy and joyful. So it's like that's so much fun.
Yeah, no, I know that after every session with you, I'm tired. I'm like ready for bed because it is so relaxing.
Mm.
Even though the experience was really intriguing and it's fun, but afterwards I'm just like really relaxed and tired, and I just want to take a nap right then and there. So it's a very nice experience. Um and I know that when you do presentations as well, when you're in front of a group of people, not just at a booth, but you're in a conference room and you're giving a presentation, the the energy is even more magnified when you have the right group of people inside that conference room. It helps you even get on, amplify your gifts even more when it's a group dynamic.
Oh yeah, like you said, if there's a room full of people who are there because they're ready for something more and they have already experienced, what it is to be connected to the divine. Yeah, the energy just amplifies and you're just ready to. Everybody gets uplifted.
And that's something you brought up. Something I want to kind of circle back when people are ready for the next level. I really think that all of us who are on this path, we do our best to take ourselves to the next level. So whether it's the meditation or we practice our abilities or we work, or some of us actually work full time doing this.
Yeah.
For me, I feel that it helps me get a boost when someone else works on me.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
that your experience?
it is. Um, you can heal yourself, and that's how I started when I discovered my healing abilities was because I was working on myself to get myself feeling better. But when you have a room or even two people or three people that are all vibrating at that higher level and you all connect and we all start sending energy out together, it's just the amplification just reverberates and it's overwhelming how much healing energy we can all bring into the world at the same time.
And that's I want to also bring that point up because when you heal other people, that healing is reciprocated. You're also healing yourself.
Yeah,
You may not know it at the time, but it just it works together in this wonderful relationship where, it's kind of like I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
right.
And so we both, or whomever is involved, whether it's a group dynamics or not, everyone is actually getting something out of it. Even the person that's giving the energy or facilitating the energy, I should say, is also getting something in return.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the benefits of sending healing energy. You also receive healing energy because the
Yeah.
energy is traveling through you, the the channel. So as it travels through me, it actually helps my body heal. And then it also helps the other person heal. So it is reciprocal. It's like there's
No,
always
that's
for everyone.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's like they say energy can never be created nor destroyed,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
it's like we're just using and amplifying the same energy to help each other out. So it's like you said, if everyone can tap into that, we would be in a much better world right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It
Yeah, I
just
think.
takes a small population to just like amplify it.
Mhm. Yeah. That's
So,
why when you're talking about when people do what they call prayer circles and they all start, focusing on a certain thing that they want to help heal, the it's amplified by thousands just by having that group of people focus on their energy on that one thing. If we could do that, by in the hundreds and thousands of people focusing our energy to bring more love and more joy and more peace into the world, it would be amazing what we could do.
oh, there are scientific studies, experiments that have done it. I forgot who did it, but was it a university where they would take 1,000 volunteers to meditate on a specific day.
Uh-huh.
And it may have been because so they say that when there's a full moon, that there tends to be a higher crime rate. And I need to double check this because I can't remember. So somebody needs to fact check me. But there was a day I think where they did a meditation where it tends to be like one of the highest crime
Great.
days or
Uh-huh.
crime nights. But through the power of meditation, it like completely annihilated the crime rate
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
the
it's possible.
intention was so strong.
Yeah. And it is true, full moons do tend to make people, well, it doesn't make them crazy, it just brings out their craziness more
No, they
intensely,
just turn into werewolves. That's all.
basically. So yeah, I could see that as a possibility that and intention does make a difference.
Yeah. And I need to double check my story. Maybe I think I'm combining two different studies or whatever. But anywho's the main gist of it is when people do a prayer circle and you have them in the masses, there is scientific evidence to
Yeah,
show that there is a global effect that happens.
yeah, there
So
is.
we
Because we're
we
all
should
sending
definitely.
out that energy, that frequency is going out, and I mean, it's technically just going out into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing else that can possibly happen. That's what the quantum physics means, right?
Yeah.
You're taking this atom, and you're linking them together, and whatever you do to this atom is going to happen instantaneously, no matter where they are. So when you're
Ugh,
linking all those intentions together, you're going to make a strong impact in the world.
you're speaking my language, nerds with quantum mechanics.
I know.
That's another podcast.
Okay.
I'm not ready for that one tonight. Um, all right, so I want to take us back now. So really
All
back in,
right.
and let's talk about when you started with this. Like, how did it happen? What is your story on realizing your gift and taking it forward?
So at the age of 5, like every 5-year-old who goes to kindergarten, they were always asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And at the time, I knew instinctually that I wanted to be a teacher. And I loved being in the classroom. I loved being around other students. I loved art. I loved drama. I loved singing. I loved everything about school. So I said, okay, I want to be a teacher. And I became a teacher. And it was effortless. I didn't have to think about it. I just went to school, I graduated, I got my teaching credential, and for the, for the first 35 years of my life, I was a teacher and I taught. And but then COVID hit, and then we had a moment of pause in the world. And I started seeing, some of my relatives passed away, some of my family friends passed away, and I started to question, is this it? Is there more to life? So I had kind of like a midlife crisis of identity of deciding, okay, I've been a teacher for most of my entire life. What else is there? Because I don't want to go back to the classroom anymore. I was burnt out. I was literally done. And I was in COVID, and I had time to reflect, and I started praying because I've always been, you know, I've had that connection with God where if I pray, usually somehow I know I'm going to be heard and I will be shown the way. But unfortunately, I kept praying and nothing. I didn't get an answer. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep praying. We were asked to come back to work, and I'm like, oh dear God, don't make me go back to the classroom. I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And sure enough, the summer before I was to return back to class, my boss called and asked me if I wanted to take a position out of the classroom. And I said, yeah, I'll take the position out of the classroom, so I'll become a coach. So I did that for the last 4 years. But at the same time, I was looking for alternatives because teaching is hard on your body. I had back pains. I had my ankles would swell, my knees would hurt, and I would go to the doctor and they're telling me, well, you're just getting old. Take ibuprofen, take Tylenol. And I thought, well, I can't do that for the next 40, 50 years. That's crazy. I'm like, there must be other alternatives. So I started looking in alternative medicine. I started looking into essential oils, and I started looking into herbs and teas that could help reduce the inflammation, that will help the bones regrow. And so I started coming up with these other alternative ways to help myself. And I usually when I started scrolling through Facebook, I would get these ads. And one of them was how to use sound bowls to reduce stress. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I think I'll take a sound bowl class. And so I took I started learning about how to use sound bowls to relieve stress, how to help you sleep, and how to actually put the sound bowl on your body part that's aching and make the vibration of the sound bowl will help reduce the pain. So I took that class and I'm like, oh, okay, got certified in sound bowl therapy. And then I discovered Donna Eden's method of using hands to wave over your body and clear out your meridians. So I learned about meridians. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And it seemed to help. It helped my knees with the swelling. It helped my ankles with the swelling. I'm like, okay. And then, of course, once you start down that rabbit hole, you just keep getting more ads, crazy ads. And then I found quantum healing, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I took classes on quantum healing, and they ask you to get certified, you have to practice on someone. And so, of course, I wasn't going to go tell any of my friends that I was doing this craziness because they would have thought I'm nuts at work, and I definitely lost it. So I was like, family at home. I'm like, all right, everybody who's in pain, come over here. I got to work on you. So my husband and my children were the ones I practiced on. And so I got certified in that, and I I knew it was working for me, and I know they told me they felt better, but I really didn't believe that I had this ability to heal. I just thought, they're just telling me that they're feeling better because I'm their mom or their wife, and why would they, want to hurt my feelings? And then I took a class on tarot reading with Radley Valentine. He's the creator of the tarot cards of the angels. He's got the angel cards out, and we went to Palm Springs for a weekend. And one of the ladies had fallen during lunch. She hurt her knee and she came back and she was rubbing it. And I asked her what was wrong. She told me her story. And I asked her if I was okay if I tried something. So I waved my hands over her knee, and she said, "What are you doing?" So I stopped. I thought I was hurting her. I'm like, "I'm sorry." I go, "I was just trying to see if I could if I can make it feel better." She goes, "No, the pain's gone. What did you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, this actually works. This is real." I'm like, "Oh, maybe I do have the ability to help people." And of course, I'm still in working at school, and I was still asking God, okay, so what else I'm going to do? Because I want to retire, but I don't just want to retire. I want to still be productive. I want to be helping people. So what should I be doing? And so I attended a few fairs and I went to different tarot card readers. And the first time I went, they pulled the one of the ladies pulled the card. She said, "Oh, it says here you're a healer." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm not a healer. I'm a teacher." A couple of months later, still praying, "Dear God, please help me. I still need, some direction. What am I supposed to be doing? Where am I supposed to go after I retire?" Went to another fair, saw a different healer, a different psychic, pulled out another card, and it was the healer card again. Third event I went to, same thing. 3 months later, 4 months later, went to a different person, and I got the healer card again. And I'm like, okay, so I've gotten the healer card 3 times in a row. Maybe there's something to this healing thing that I'm supposed to be doing. And that in between there, I started meditating because they said, one of the best ways to connect and get your answers is to meditate. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
I've tried praying. This praying thing didn't work. I didn't get my answers, so I started meditating. And sure enough, that's when I started getting the colors and the names and the colors and the names. And then at one point, I just heard it's time for you to start practicing on others and not just your family. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to go out there and tell people that I do this. And I'm like, okay. So I went to Thousand Oaks. That's when the first event I went to, the Thousand Oaks back in 2023 with Little Sedona, the healing fair. And I walked around and I saw what everybody was doing. And I approached Deborah and Jenny that time. And I'm like, oh, I would like to have a booth here. And she looked at me and she goes, and I told her, I'm a healer and I do quantum energy. She looked at me, she goes, yes, yes, you do. And you're very good at it. I'm like, okay, how does she know
You
that?
didn't tell me that story. This is
Well, that's,
new.
no, well, this is, yeah, and she's like, and you're very good at it. And I'm like, okay, if you say so. She goes, yeah, join us in Santa Barbara. Here's the information and sign up. And I'm like, okay. So my first event was in Santa Barbara. That's when we met. And that first time I was like, okay, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And I had never actually used toning on my family. It was just something that, I knew how to do because in the courses, as you take the quantum touch classes, the advanced one teaches you how to use toning because quantum touch is basically just holding your hands and visualizing the person's in between your hands, whatever body part that may be, the knee, the back, the liver, and you just focus your attention and you send the energy to between your hands. And well, after doing that for about 20 minutes, you get tired and bored. So you use toning to amplify the energy, but also to keep yourself awake. So I thought, oh, okay, well, as people were sitting down at my seat, I'm like, they kept saying, you have to tone. I could hear you, I got to download, you have to tone. I'm like, you want me to sing in public? This
You're
is
like, no, no, thank you. No,
you
no,
already
thank
got
you.
me here and now you want me to tone. I'm like, okay, well, I'm already here. I might as well give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? And that's how I met you and Mary Elizabeth, because you guys were sitting across the room from me and you guys heard me all the way over there.
Did I really? I
Yeah,
don't even have a recollection on anything. Oh my
Tony.
God.
It's like, who's that weird lady
That's
over there
right.
singing?
That's right. I remember now. I was like, oh, that sounds nice. I remember thinking that, like, oh, that sounds nice.
And that's the story of how it came to be. So I didn't discover my skills until late in my 50s.
No, that's legit because I mean, there's some people that have these gifts. I'm pretty sure that if you were to look back into your childhood, you might remember some things here and there. But it's so easy, especially growing up the way we grew up. Gen Xers, we were kind of just left to like survive. You
Pretty
know,
much.
we're the strongest generation. So it was very easy to just like take it for granted and just set it aside,
Mhm,
right? And so I am with you. I think with COVID, it did put the whole world on pause, and more people than we probably know, their lives changed
mhm,
because I totally relate to your thing, to your experience. Like, is this all there is to it?
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people did. And so they've changed their lives completely. It's a beautiful thing. It's also a scary thing to go through when
Yes.
you're going through this. And I think you're also, you're very, very honest and vulnerable because when you come into these gifts, you don't want to tell people.
No, you don't. They're gonna first of all, they're gonna think you're crazy.
Yeah.
At least the people that you're used to hanging around with because it's not something that they're used to seeing or hearing.
No, totally. I have my two sets of friends. I have my friends that they kind of know what I do, but we never talk about it.
Right.
And then I have you guys that we can go all balls to the wall and just have fun with it and start discussing all these other things. But you really live like a double life because,
Yeah.
I think we are still, if we were like, who's that psychic? Teresa Computo,
Mhm.
right? And or Tyler or Henry, they're full blown confident. They've established themselves and they can talk about it like like whatever. But we're still growing in our abilities, and every time we work with someone, every time we continuously work with ourselves, our abilities just expand, expand, expand. That it's kind of hard to explain. You get to a point where you're just like, I'd rather just keep this to myself and I'll present myself as this person that can do these things under certain circumstances, which will be like at the psychic fairs.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because for the first, I would say, year and a half, that's exactly what I did. I didn't want anybody at work, at school to know that I had these abilities or that I was doing this, in public.
In
So
public.
in public, yes, out in the world. But now that I've gotten a lot more comfortable with myself and my abilities, sometimes I'll have, my close coworkers that I'm working in the office and they're like, oh, I have this headache. And I'm like, oh, and I instinctively start waving my hands, you know, without even thinking about it. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And then I catch myself doing it. I'm like, "Oh, I'm just getting rid of your headache." And they're
I'm
looking
just
at me
swatting a fly.
I'm like, "Yeah, see, most before I used to try to do it under the table where they couldn't see my hands. But
Uh-huh.
now it's like it's just natural. I just start wiping my hands. I'm like, they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just trying to get rid of your headache." And they're like, okay." But then after, 10, 15 minutes, they feel better. They're like, "Oh, that does feel better." You know? And then the other day somebody came in and she was like, "Oh, I have this chronic pain all over my body." And I'm like, "Oh," and there was 3 other people in the room and I didn't realize they were there. And I'm like, "Is it okay if have you had Reiki sessions?" She's like, "Oh, yeah, I had Reiki sessions." I'm like, "Is it okay if I scan you?" She goes, "Sure." So she just stood there and I started scanning her and the 3 people behind me were like all freaked out, like, "What the heck's going on here?" And then I realized, "Oh, this isn't the healing fair." But it was like, "Oh, well, too late."
It's so true. Yeah, I think you're right. You get more comfortable. My sister, who's my biggest supporter, um, you know, she always hits me up for every little thing. What's gonna happen here? As a psychic or whatever. But when it comes to like what I tell her, what else I do or we do, she shuts
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
So I've learned that I can't really tell her everything because she's like, "Yeah, I believe you, but that's just a little bit crazy."
That's too
Like,
far out there.
yeah, that's too much. Like, no, not to. But But I we are working, and
Mhm.
this is not just us. It's pretty much everybody because everybody has these abilities. Whether you want to or not, at some point in your life, you're gonna open up to these abilities. We're
Yeah.
just we're just making the way for those people that haven't gotten there yet.
Exactly. I mean,
And
we
we
all
just
were born with gifts. We may not be aware of them, and I like to call it's a rediscovery of what we already know and but aren't aware of. Yeah.
it's so true. We these are God-given gifts that we were given, but we were meant to forget to remember.
Right.
And that's the biggest lesson, is to remember who we where we came from, and who
Mhm.
we really are. We are source. We are the I am presence. We are everything. So, but that's a different podcast. We can go into that
No,
a
it's
little.
true. And it's like we all have the ability to not only heal others, but heal ourselves. We all have the ability to connect to the divine. We all have the ability to hear, if not see, but hear, know the
No.
messages that are coming through. But it does take a moment of silence and it does take practice and it does take your willingness to rediscover.
Yeah, the big thing is the commitment and consistency.
And all of us are different, so none of us are going to do it the same way.
Mm-mm. That's right. Because my style of energy healing on people is different from yours.
Yeah.
I definitely don't do singing. They would walk away real quick. And I'm a touchy person. I like to touch people. I don't know why. So if when they first come to me, I'm like, "Are you okay with me touching you?" Now, I let's talk about remote healing
Hmm.
because I can do remote healing fairly effectively.
Yes.
I'm just a people person and I like to see them. I like to, touch them appropriately. Make sure I say that, touch them
Yes.
appropriately. But what's your experience with remote healing? Because I know there's people they're like, "Oh, but I don't want to do Zoom,"
Right.
but what's your
Yeah.
experience with remote?
Um, I was taught when I went to my quantum touch classes, we did them remotely and we had to practice on each other because it was, it was an 8 hour day and he would explain something and then we'd be sent to breakout rooms and we'd have to practice on each other. And so I know that it works because I was able to feel the other person's energy coming to me and they told me they could feel my energy going to them. And I've had people that I've worked with that I've met, like the people that I met in, like I said, at Rally Valentine's tarot cards that are all over the country. And afterwards, we were connecting because they were there when I did the experience, and they're like, "Oh, can you heal me? Can you do a session on me?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll practice because I need the practice anyway." And they were in New Mexico, and then we're in New York, and we were doing these sessions via Zoom, and they were telling me that they felt better, and they were able to keep the energy going. Well, what Deborah felt, her knee stopped hurting because she likes to hike, but then she re-hurt it when she went hiking and she fell. But up to then, it had lasted almost 3 months. So the pain had gone away for 3 months until she fell and re-injured it. And I did her session remotely, and she's in Portland, Oregon, and I'm here in Los Angeles. So it works.
Wow, yeah. And I think that's a game changer. Just to show that if this is if this is something that you want to get into, that you're not just restricted to being in a particular office or, setup, that it's very versatile and portable.
Yeah, if you want to do, healing and you don't want to be in a physical location, which, who wants to pay rent right now? It's yeah, healing can be done virtually. You don't have to be in person. I personally, because I'm a teacher and and I have a lot of students who are on the spectrum as far as autism, and they don't like being touched. I mean, it's a trigger for them if you touch them. I've always learned that uh, a lot of people are very sensitive to being touched. So that's why I usually scan the body and I work on the outer in the outer fields of in the biofield because you get the same result, but you don't get that trauma activated.
Yeah, that's a good point. I could, yeah, and it's so when people go to these places and they ask, try to figure out who's a good energy healer, figure out what's the modality that they prefer.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, I think we can all work without touching people,
Yeah.
especially because we can both do it remotely.
Yes.
But it could be a trigger. Ooh, yeah, and that could be tough for people
Mhm.
for
I know
sure.
Emmy, she was one of the people that she says she doesn't like, people working on her. And she's like, "Oh, you're gonna do it, but you're not gonna touch him." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "I'm just gonna be working here." She's like, "Okay, fine, try me." That's one of the reasons she allowed me to do a healing session on her because I was the only person who said, "Yeah, I'm just gonna work out here." And they're like, "Oh," she's like, "Okay, fine, let's do that."
Well, now she's changing her tune.
Yes.
She's like, this toucher.
Yeah, when I met her about a year and a half ago, she said like, "No, no, I don't like people, touching me." It's just like it's a trigger. I'm like, that's fine.
hmm
So yeah.
So let's go back to these events that you've been doing. Uh, what has been the most interesting experience for you?
I would have to say that in November, I had a very interesting experience with this young man who came to see me. Um, we were in San Diego and we were in what I call the dungeon. It was an event that was 4 rooms and the whole hallway. So there were tons and tons and tons and tons of healers, psychics, crystal people who sell crystals. And the room I'd never been there before, that I was in, the spot that I got was the darkest room. It was dark. I mean, it literally looked like the dungeon, and virtually nobody would go into that room because it was so dark. They didn't even know we were there. And I remember this gentleman came in, and I wasn't even at my booth because I was pulling one of the natives and visiting my neighbors because there was nobody there, and I needed somebody to talk to. So I was with the crystal lady across, visiting her because she had all the amethysts, and I'm like, "Oh, this is beautiful. I'm touching it." And the gentleman came up to my booth, and he looked at me and he goes, "Are you Edna?" And I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "Oh," he goes, "I want you to know," he goes, "that when I walked up to your booth," he goes, "your booth was the brightest booth in the whole area." He goes, "I could see the light coming down from above." He's like, "You definitely have an angel energy here." I'm like, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad, that that you feel that it's a place of peace and of light." And then he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I'd like to do a session with you." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "But it's a very specific ask." And then I'm like, "All right." He goes, I work with the angels, with the archangels. He goes, "And we go to battle against demons." And he goes, "And so," he goes, my wings they're all frayed and damaged." He goes, "Would you be able to heal them?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." And he looked at me like, "You can do that?" And I said, "Well, I'm not the one doing anything. I'm just channeling the angel energy through me, and they're the ones that are going to be doing the healing, so they can do anything. Anything is possible for the angels." So he sat down in front of me, and I closed my eyes, and I started toning, and started sending him energy. And as I was sitting there through my third eye, I did see his wings, and they were beautiful and they were frayed. And as I was sending the energy, I could see the feathers, the tips of the feathers regrowing and coming, getting this bright, beautiful white iridescent color that would be sparkling. And that to me was the most amazing feeling I could ever have and see, visualize. And I asked him, "Oh, how did it feel?" He goes, "Oh," he goes, "I feel better." And I'm like, "Okay." So he paid, and he goes with, I charged him, and he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "My angel said I have to give you a tip." I'm like, "Oh." He goes, I'm like, "Oh, okay, thank you." And he goes, "Now don't be surprised because they were very specific." And so I handed him the card reader so that he can enter the number. And he goes, "The tip they told me to leave for you was 177." And he paid me $177 for the session, almost twice as what I had charged him for the healing session. And I'm like, "Okay, that's kind of odd." And I thanked him. Of course, I wasn't going to say no.
I know. It's like, yeah, we
I'm
don't
like,
say
"Thank
no.
you." I'm not gonna say no. And he was like, "No, the angel said this is how much I had to give you." I'm like, "Oh, thank your angels for me." But then the next day he came back, because this was a Saturday, and he came back and he was just radiate. He was bright, he was happy, he was glowing. He looked like a different person when he walked in the following day. So that made my heart very happy.
Oh my gosh. Those are the stories I love to hear. It's those people out there who are just way different. Imagine him telling his family. I'm sure he didn't tell his family what
Oh
he's
no.
doing.
He did not go home that there's this crazy lady out there feeling wings.
Yeah. Not the type of normal conversation you would have at home. Oh my god. Well, it'll change. One day it'll change for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you've been really focused on the energy healing because that's what developed and that's what you know as of right now. But I know that more things are coming for you.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
So as I've been working with people, I know that I usually connect with the angels. And so at first I was just having color. So I would tell the person, "Oh, Angel Michael's here, or Angel Raphael is here," whoever would show up. But I've actually started getting downloads from them. And so um, be sitting there working on a person, and then I'll see the color, and then I'll ask, "Is there a message?" And then I will get a knowing, because I don't hear them. I just know them, know what they're saying in my mind, and then I relay the message to the person. So that's new because at first it was just like, oh, Raphael's here, and then that would be the end of it. But now they're actually giving me messages to tell the people. And and lately I've been getting these downloads, but it's more than just downloads. It's like, well, I'm actually channeling. I'm channeling the angels now. So that's new.
And what do you mean? So you've mentioned channeling before in the very beginning, channeling the energy. So
Yes.
go into a synopsis of what you mean by channeling this way.
So channeling energy is basically me connecting to the person and then allowing the angel energy to travel through me and to the person. And that's how I send energy. And I just, like I said, I'm a vessel for that energy. But lately when I'm just sitting there in a meditative state, all of a sudden they're like, I'm getting these messages and I'm just saying what I'm downloading, whatever it's coming through, but I'm just saying it without thinking. And then after I'm done, I'm like, where did that come from? Because it wasn't mine. And sometimes I don't even remember what I say. I'm like, what did I say? So that's different.
Oh, it's so exciting. You're gonna have to start recording yourself. That's what I had to do because the downloads were so much
Yeah.
that there was no way, like I could remember just one sentence out of like 30-minute channel sessions. So you have
Mhm.
to record yourself.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to start.
Oh my gosh. That's really cool. So that's brand new. What about the other thing? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Light language.
Oh, well, the lineup, yeah. Well, thanks to Nada. When we met back in November of 24, 23, I did tell you that I told her that I did want to start learning how to use my light language again to redevelop that skill because I just find it fascinating. And she did a session and she did activate it. And I've been trying to do a light language, but usually when I'm working with the person, I'll do it under my breath because I don't want them to hear me because I don't want them to think I'm crazier than I already am. So I am using light language, but I still don't understand what I'm saying. Although Nathan, thank you, translates for me. But it's gotten to the point where I'm feeling a little bit more confident, so I'm starting to use it more out loud.
Hmm. Yeah, no, and it's funny because when I listen to other people talk light language, like it all sounds the same, and then it doesn't. It's like so weird. And I know like everyone has a different style, and I know the different languages, the light languages, it's all light language is just light language of the heart.
Mhm,
So there is no like verbal translation. It is a feeling of what you receive from the words that you hear.
mhm.
That's how you interpret it. It's an empathic language.
Right.
It's not a verbal language. There is no like a translation from English to Spanish or whatever.
Mhm,
And they come from even though different species, whether you call them extraterrestrials or dimensional beings or entities, whatever you want to call it, they all have like maybe a dialect.
yeah.
So just like when you're in the Amazon rainforest, they all speak a dialect of Portuguese or Spanish or whatever. It's a different dialect, and they have different tones. I think when I speak I sound like an angry German person, right?
You do. I'm like, why is she mad? I'm like, okay, yes, ma'am. Whatever that was, I'm following directions.
I noticed that. I'm like, I don't mean it like that, but but everybody and some other people have a very soft tone, like your very soft tone, and Mary Elizabeth, I think, just goes like up and down or what have you. So, but it's still light language, and it's still the language of love, and that's a beautiful thing because when you've also reached to that point where you can speak the light language, then that's another form of amplification
Mm,
because what you're doing is you're just now you're really showing that you're working from the heart.
mm.
And
Yeah,
that's what makes the healings even more powerful. So even for the person that is not able to receive it because they have blocks or whatever, at the end of the day, you've managed to do something
yeah.
because it is coming truly from a sincere place of compassion and really wanting to help the person.
And the energy is still in their auric field. I mean, the energy's there and it's going to stay there. And whenever they're ready for it, all they'll just have to do is open up to it and it will help come in and start healing what needs to be healed.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you just said because it's not just going in there and people get some sort of service or whatever. It's going to linger there until you're ready for it. So
Yeah,
again, it's like planting the seed. And some people, will say, well, my pain is gone, but it came back.
yeah,
Okay, did you stay? Have you been staying in that energy
yeah.
where you came into a place of surrender and you were open to it? And
Mhm.
then now you've changed to where you're like in a place of judgment or whatever. That's when the pains start to flare up again, is when they
Exactly.
switch that energy or that vibration when they're in where they were in a state of flow and open, and now they're just, maybe they're pissed off about something or
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, that's usually when you start getting the pain. When you're having physical pain is because you're either stressed. Stress causes a lot of pain. Even though
Mhm.
people say, "Oh, I'm not stressed." You may not know it. For 35 years, I was a teacher. I had a lot of stress in my life, and it was just normal. That level of stress was normal, but my body was yelling, "No, this is not normal. Your knees hurt. Your back hurts. Your feet hurt. This is not normal." So stress is something that causes a lot of pain. Anger will bring back pain. Sadness will bring back pain. And if you don't have the pain, it will create the pain and it will leave it out in your auric field. So to clear it out, you've got to get out of that state of being and raise your vibration to what is joy, happiness, and love. And it's in those states that you don't feel the pain anymore.
Yeah, and that's where the person has to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm always big when I do, my podcast or whatever. It's like at the end of the day, what we're providing is a band-aid. And but the person has to do the work. Even if you go into a retreat and then you're like miraculously healed, and it's been proven through all these, studies that from Dr. Joe Dispenza or what have you, that the moment that person goes back into fear or
Hmm.
stress or whatever, that miracle comes, like it just like goes away.
Yeah.
You're back to that cancer, you're back to that, whatever issue that you were experiencing at that moment, because
Mhm.
you have to continuously work on yourself.
And you have to release the fear and the pain of whatever it is that's causing it. You know, if you're not ready to actually say, okay, I'm done with that. Thank you for the lesson. It's time to move on. I learned the lesson and it's time for me to do something different now. It will reoccur.
Yeah. And that's huge. That's huge because a lot of it comes down. So like for I'm going to use you as an example because you worked for 35 years.
Hmm.
You had no idea that
No,
you were stressed out.
no. It was
It
normal.
wasn't until COVID,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. It wasn't until COVID when I was at home and I could teach from home and I wasn't stuck in my job from from 8 o'clock until 4 o'clock every day, the same thing over and over and over for 35 years, that I realized there's something different. The level dropped. And I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like to not be stressed. So until you experience that, your normalcy, that stress normalcy, you see it as normal. Your body's telling you is not.
And you know what I liked about that, what you just said, is because some people, I know that I was when I was younger, I was addicted to work. Like work was my thing. I was always driven to work. I was an addict to work. Like everything was work, 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 work. What I thought was fun, even though I was working in a fast-paced, high stress company, to me felt normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it like I'm pretty sure I still have a lot of stuff to work on that I have no idea because it's still normal to me. But at
Mhm.
least you were able to recognize it at that moment that like I don't want to work like this anymore.
Right. Yeah, no. That stress level is killing me and I didn't see it.
Yeah, and your whole dynamics, it's not just you that changes, but then your surroundings change, your environment changes, your family structure changes where it's more lighthearted, more happy, less stress, and
Right.
there's I think then you're able to learn how to develop a better work-life balance.
Hmm. Yeah, because like I said, for me, teaching is a 24 hour job. Because you go
Hmm.
I would go home thinking about my students and how do I do this differently so Johnny gets it? And how do I do this differently so that Miguel gets it? And so at home, I'm still thinking about work. It's like there's no shut off, there's no off button. And then during the summer, it's like, okay, now I need to prepare for next year. So what am I going to do next year to do, to X, Y, and Z? So there's no break when it comes to teaching. So that was, like you said, I was addicted to my job. There was no life balance. It was like my job was my life.
And then you still have grades, papers to grade. You have the report cards and the
During
progress reports.
conferences, yes, uh-huh, yeah,
It's never ending.
never
And, kudos to teachers because it is a 24-hour job.
yeah,
It is. And you're trying to reach everyone, but all you can do is reach maybe one or two kids, the reality
yeah, yeah, and you do
of
the
it.
best you can, but, so
So, okay, let's fast forward now. What are your plans for the future?
well, for the future, let's see, I want to continue teaching, but not in the classroom, so I will be retiring soon, hopefully in June of this year, and then, I wanna start I'm thinking of starting classes, to help people develop their healing abilities, to shine their light brightly, to come what I call back online, to connect back to the divine and help them heal themselves, heal their family, and heal the world.
And how are you going to be doing this? Is this going to be like an online course or?
Yeah, I plan to do an online course. I think it's easier for people, especially it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can always join. One of the things that I found very difficult was that there were a lot of great classes that I wanted to take, but they were in, the UK and in Australia. And I'm like, well, I'm not flying out there. Why did you just do it online? And so, yeah, I want to offer it online so that everybody who wants to be able to learn and participate will have the ability to do so.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Every class I wanted to take was in Canada. I'm like, man, Canada must be the most enlightened country ever. You know?
Exactly. And you're like, I want to take that class, but I can't spend 6 months in
I
Canada.
know. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And for a while, I was like signing up to like every single course, just trying to like, I overwhelmed myself in the amount of knowledge that I was signing up for.
Well, I think we all do that because you're like, when you start realizing that things are possible and that you have gifts and you don't know what they are, you just want to learn all these different modalities and techniques to see which gift it is that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Or in our case, we just want more. We just want
Oh
to
yeah,
keep
that's
wanting
true.
more.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, I want to try that now.
Yeah.
See if I can activate that.
We were talking about this earlier. It's like, there's psychic readers, psychic mediums who are phenomenal
Hmm.
because that is their soul jam. That's what they love. They just want to do that. That's their gift and they stick to that.
Hmm.
So when you find those people that that's all they do, the readings are going to be, really good more than likely because that's their jam. But it takes some of us like for me, like I could do the readings, no problem. They're on point, but is that where my heart is? No, my heart is to do something else, what I call light Kodak, what do I call it? Light activation. I forgot what
Like,
I
yeah,
called myself.
light activation, and you're very good at it. So thank you.
Light code activation. So thank you. So I manipulate DNA.
Mhm.
But but I think what's great about psychic mediumship is because everyone knows tarot cards. It's the easiest thing to get into to
Yeah.
start learning and growing where you want to get into. So for anybody who's out there who's trying to figure things out, I think if meditation, you hit it. Meditation is number one. And
Yeah.
meditation doesn't have to be like you're like, no. There's different types of meditation that will resonate with the individual. That's better than just that. But if anyone wants to get their hands, wet, the tarot, just learning tarot is really good in learning how to connect with the spirit realm and starting to figure out whether that's something you want to get into or if it scares you, then you back away from it. But it's the opening door, and also when you're dealing with people, people are so used to it from so many years of
Yeah.
of you hearing about tarot readings that it's kind of like for entertainment purposes, so people feel more inclined to believe in it and feel safe with that. I
Well,
think that's a
see,
great starting point.
it is, and but my problem with those is that I was always drawn to tarot cards as, before I developed my skill, my abilities, and but I was afraid. Because as Catholic, you're like, oh no, you don't want to do that. You don't know what you're going to attract. You don't know who's
Yeah.
actually doing the reading. So I was told, oh well, learn how to do tarot cards, and that way you'll connect and you'll be happy. I couldn't do that. So that's why I decided to go to Raleigh Valentine's School of because he created the angel cards. And I'm like, okay, angel tarot cards don't sound scary because they're angels, right? So we could do that. But then I learned how to use the angel tarot cards, and to me they were cumbersome. I'm like, "Ah, this is too much work. I have to memorize what this card means and what this card means and what this card means." So I said, no, I'm not doing that. So then I said, okay, well, I'll do oracle cards because oracle cards are easier because it gives you the message right there. I just shuffle them, and if I have a question, I ask it, I pull a card, and then I read it. It makes total sense to me. I don't have to think about, is this the cup card or this, the upside down, whatever, hermit card? It's like, no. So oracle cards are just as easy. Oh, actually, much more easy than tarot cards. And if you don't want to do the actual tarot cards, you can always get the angel ones. So yeah, and then I developed my own set of oracle cards, so that's even easier because I already know what they say. So, but yes, I had a problem with tarot cards.
Yeah, and I can see that. I thought you had to memorize it. And then I finally realized I'm like, oh no, those are just like jumping off points. It's whatever you interpret it. And at these psychic events, sometimes when it's slow, you go into people's booths and you exchange services and you get to
Right.
see their style. And they can take that same card and interpret it like yeah, like interpret it differently.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and then that's opened up my eyes too. When I'm a closet addicted to psychics, by the way. It's just FYI. I mean, I'm good with everybody else, but for me, I like my own downloads. I always question them. I feel like I'm biased because I want them to work out for me a certain way.
Of
So,
course, we all do.
yeah. So I hit up other psychics because I love it.
Uh-huh.
And because I'd rather someone tell me something about me that I need to look out for that I may not be privy
Right.
to because I have too many biases, right? But no, I realized that they can take the same deck of cards and their interpretation is different.
Right.
The information, the outcome, the information is the same, but how they come to it and how they explain it is different.
Hmm.
So I mean, and you say it doesn't, and like you say, it doesn't resonate with everybody. It's just a good jumping off point if you want to try something woo woo and you don't feel too weird about it, and all your friends are going to more than likely have a let's have a tarot party.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. People are drawn to tarot cards. That is true.
Yeah, versus hey, let's talk to the angels and
Yeah.
heal. Like no, yeah, I
No,
no,
no, no, no, no, yeah, it's true.
I'm good. I don't know what kind of crack you're on, but it's all right.
So true.
Ah. All right, and so let's culminate everything here. And what is your message to anybody and everybody that's watching this podcast?
What's my message to everyone here? Let's see. So Gabriel wants you to know that you are all loved more than you know. Peace lives within you. No one can love you as much as you love yourself. And that's from the angels.
Ooh, I felt that energy. It was the whole like getting sleepy.
Oh,
It's
yes,
time for me
love.
to put on my PJs. Well, thank you. That was a beautiful message, especially during this time that we're going through right now. It's not gonna get easier.
No.
Um, and that's something that we need to learn is how to love ourselves, to trust ourselves, to push forward and not be in fear. So
Love
thank you
yourself,
to
love
the
your
Angelic.
neighbors, and we can get through this.
Yeah. Love thy neighbor. Love thy enemies. Eeh,
That one's a tough one.
that was a tough one. How about just being neutral? Is that
Exactly.
okay?
I can do neutral, neutral I can do.
I can do neutral.
That's as close I could get, yes.
Baby steps. Let's be real.
Yep, that's true. That's why they started with love yourself first, right?
Yeah, let's
You
focus
are
on
loved
yourself.
and love yourself.
It's like a whole bunch of classes I've taken. It's like pretend you're in an airplane and the oxygen masks come down. You always put the mask on yourself
Yes,
first
you do.
before you put it on others. And
Okay.
that's what's always stuck in my head. I'm like, me first.
Yes, love
Me
yourself first.
first, and then I can give to others
Mhm.
accordingly.
Yeah, and that's the
So,
message.
yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Edna. I love hanging out with you. I love chatting with you. You are so much fun. We have a lot of fun together, and I cannot wait for us to get together again.
All right, so if you want to connect, I'm at ednaenergetics.com. Um, so you can send me a message there if you're interested.
And I'll have all the information in the description, the links below, her website, um, email, whatever, so you can get a hold of her and hopefully get a session, a woo woo session
A
from
woo,
her.
yeah, a woo session.
Woo woo session and feel great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.